Hello and welcome to Celtic World, the YouTube channel and podcast that unites the worldwide fan base of the mighty Glasgow Celtic. From Hawick to Honolulu, Troon to Titicaca. Wherever you're joining us from, you're very much part of a Celtic world, and we've got two regular faces here joining us, looking very chuffed with recent events. We have Ian in Wales. Ian, how goes it?
Yeah, looking chuffed, but this is masking like 90 minutes of stress. So I think it's like I've just, it's kind of like been out in a massive bender and starting to feel all right again. I kind of feel like that I'm on the stress version of that. I've had like a really stressful evening, slept it off, and I'm just, ready to go again.
And how about you, Paul? Are you chipper without any reservations?
Yeah, I am actually. Maybe getting up in the middle of the night will do that for you. Whatever it was, 1:45. Try to get to sleep at 3 a.m. is not easy after a fair amount of excitement and adrenaline pumping. But yeah, got 2 or 3 hours kip and then back up for work. So yeah, and bloody heat wave here today. Spring is well and truly sprung. It's about 28, 29 degrees today. So yeah, starting to get cozy.
Excuse me, my wife's gone into the office today, so I made the bold decision to not have the heating on after having it on for a couple of days. Hands like icicles.
Aircon's on just ever so slightly, so it shouldn't be interfering with sound quality, Gaff. But yeah, heading to a whole week of 30 plus next week, so starting to get a little bit hot for this time of year.
Well, there's lots of comments there referencing the sound quality. We are back on StreamYard. That's the big news, everyone. We had a brief flirtation with another platform, which started off really exciting, like all relationships, but ended up in acrimony, as evidenced by the most recent show. So I had to take that off. So everything should be smooth today, except Paul's microphone is a little bit, well, he's using a new microphone, and I think a wee bit stuttery there, but I don't see any complaints. Sound quality is as good as our central defense last night. That's good to hear.
No higher praise. No higher praise.
It's exceptional then. Absolutely exceptional.
All right. So what we're going to talk about today, gents? Well, obviously we're going to talk about the game. We're not going to go through stills of the game because, well, there were no goals and there were just far too many incidents. Near misses and efforts. And also I've been very busy and haven't had time to take any stills. That's really the main reason. But, we'll go through the game. We'll talk about all the issues. We'll field questions from our friends in chat. And then we'll move on to the rest of the Champions League campaign, how we think that's shaping up, the other results, the table, what that means for the rest of our season. And we'll spend a ridiculously, disrespectfully short amount of time discussing Motherwell away right at the very end of the show. And if there's still any time for Celtic socials, that's where they'll come in. So, well, let's talk about the game. Where should we start with that? Probably no better place to start than the lineup. See now. I have to remember how to handle StreamYard. Paul, when you saw the lineup, Schmeichel, Johnson, Trusty, Scales, Valle, McGregor, Engels, Hatate, Kuhn, Maeda, Ida. Were there any surprises, first of all?
Yeah, I think it's a mild surprise that that Ida was selected ahead of Kyogo. I think everyone expected him to go with just the usual sort of strongest 11 as it's been over the last little while, but it showed the makings of a slight tactical shift, which I think was welcome, and we'll get into the nitty gritty on it. But a lot of people giving Ida, I think, some unfair heat. I thought he did the job, and a thankless task, but I thought he did it pretty well, and certainly early in the game when potentially the most pressure would come on, he was a really good out ball. So yeah, literally the teams were out by the time I was out of bed and got the right channel on. So yeah, they were just showing the home side's team, and then obviously the first I knew that Ida was starting was shortly thereafter. So yeah, I think most people would say that's the only slight surprise. But he's entitled to make a bit of a tactical change given what's happened previously.
Ian, when you saw Ida, did you think, well, clear tactical approach here?
I just thought it makes sense.
More than he said he was going to do.
Yeah, I think it's like it's kind of a mix of emotions, right? Because we know the ability of Kyogo and what Kyogo can kind of give you, and then when you see him not there and you see Ida, but it kind of makes sense. The only thing I would say is one of the areas that Ida needs to improve on is his hold up play, and I don't think he's going to get much of a bigger test, especially in this Champions League campaign now than this game. And did I think he was like pitch perfect? No. But especially in the first half, he did like quite a decent job and was finding players, and he had a decent enough chance. And there was a couple of times that we saw Hatate and he just didn't 100% read that run, and it could have been different. So I think a very passable performance for him on this in terms of the role he was meant to do. I think if he's asked to do this 5 or 6 times, I think you'll see a different player because it's all learning. So when I saw him in the starting lineup, I was like, oh, okay, I get it, I understand it. But I was a bit like kind of, that Kyogo poses a different challenge. So you kind of, even though Rodgers maybe said he wasn't going to change tactically and all that, I think when you saw Ida, you were like, right, there's something different because of that selection.
Now, I don't know what the circumstances were for you watching the game. Personally, I watched it this morning. I had a very long day yesterday, and I just couldn't stay up for it.
I knew you'd do that.
What do you mean you knew? I do.
Well, you mean having the same skepticism the rest of us had, but you would be going, well,
it's old as well.
I can watch it. I can watch it later. I can just shut off social media. You do this quite regularly in the Champions League. You don't get up in the middle of the night. You're an early starter.
Yeah, got up early into the living room, laptop, got the game on, and it was a thoroughly uncomfortable start to the day. I was just feeling pretty uncomfortable the whole way, which is no surprise, really, when you look at the attack momentum, my new favorite stats presentation. Along the top here is Atalanta, unhelpfully in green, and then Celtic below. So
I don't like this momentum thing. I was having this discussion actually on a group chat the other night, and I don't like it because to me it's just possession. Like it's like a fancier version of possession. But someone maybe quite rightly said, no, it gives you a bit of an indication of more of how the game went. So not just the possession, but the arcs in terms of where the intensity is. So maybe I've called it wrong.
Well, and the longer the line, the more attacking intent or threat there was. So you can see there's periods where they're attacking constantly, and then there's peaks of when they were really close. And we did, well, as you can see there, not that much, but you don't need stats to tell you that, or graphics. You watched it live, Paul, in the middle of the night in Australia then, I assume. And Ian, you watched it at a quite pleasant evening time.
Yeah, so I was meant to go to a parents' evening the night before and the teacher was ill, so they rescheduled it. So I was rushing back for kickoff, and instead of my usual going down the CSC, I just watched it in the house, which like part of me was glad about because I was like, oh, if we get absolutely gubbed, at least I'm home. But yeah, just turned out to be 90 minutes of pure stress. And then it was like, I think I just sat there listening to our commentators here where Neil Lennon and Joe Hart were kind of giving the post-match, and it was like quite enjoyable, to be fair. So yeah, just nice end to it, nice wind down, but was a bit wired for bed.
Okay, so Paul, let's talk about the first half then, the early exchanges. How did you think the game went in the first 10 minutes? Were you just watching the clock thinking, we're still in this, we haven't blown up yet?
Kind of. And the longer the game went, the sort of, it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster because early on you're going, well, this is good so far, but we can't keep this up for 90 plus minutes. And the longer it went, you sort of dared to dream a little bit, but always expected the sting in the tail. which very nearly came with those 2 late fouls right outside the box. I was like, Jesus Christ, you boys have been faultless all game, and then you both give away a daft free kick outside the D. But yeah, no, I thought first 10 minutes, they had a crack, but it wasn't Dortmund level of swarming all over us, and you know, the high press, man to man, you know, stuff we'd heard about. You could see it, but I didn't feel like it was going crazy. And I thought maybe the first 10, 15 minutes was amongst the best we had in terms of the tactical plan to find Ida, cutting out, you know, silly tight passes around the front of our box and inviting pressure. Both defence and Schmeichel, you know, his better distribution really played well to that tactic of missing out their attacking half and trying to get to Ida up to the chest. And I thought early on, to Ian's point, he was a good source of an out ball. He later on, when he was asked to hold it up, maybe not so much, but then he was just sort of flicking it off one touch, finding somebody. And obviously the tactic was to get the ball to him and get midfielders around him, and then for them to push it out to the wide areas and try and snap a counter. I thought we did pretty well. We looked organised, that we were much more compact. You know, in defensive lines, we were pretty much, you know, banks 4 and 5 and really closely together, which, you know, you could have driven a couple of buses through the gaps when we were playing in Dortmund a few weeks ago. So yeah, I was pretty pleased with how we set up. And, you know, it's all well and good the manager coming up with a setup, but you've then actually got to go out and execute it, and the players did a really good job on that basis.
This is the graph the graphic that you shared with us. Isn't this what you're referring to? The Dortmund match is on the right and Atalanta on the left. So talk to us about what you see there.
Well, I think obviously this is an average player position for the whole game. So, you know, it's not a great representation of what players are doing all the time, but obviously it gives you a picture of where that sort of pans out. And you can see we're much more compact on the left in last night's game. You've got almost a bank of 6 and a bank of 3. And then in the Dortmund game, we're much more central, meaning that they've got to kind of push through. If they're going to get any joy, it's kind of have to be down the wings, because it's too tight through that central area. Whereas we're much more spread out. In the Dortmund game, there's big gaps between the centre backs. Karl is completely isolated in the middle with very little support, and they were able to sort of play right through us centrally and in the wings, and it just wasn't enough cover. Too often we were caught with 4 or 5 players the wrong side of the ball chasing back, and we know what happened on that night.
Ian, at what stage in the game did you begin to think to yourself that I have a feeling Atalanta aren't really, you know, firing in this game? They're not firing on all cylinders. They're not proving remotely as lethal as previous opponents.
I don't think. Look, I think, you know, especially in the first half, Schmeichel made some. I mean, we made all game. He made some great saves. So, like, there's no doubt that at points we were kind of riding our luck, if you want to call it that. But there's a bit of me that's like, we deserve a bit of luck, given, especially after Dortmund, when they were like hitting stuff from everyone going in. One of the things that I noticed straight away when they were there, and it's kind of, we didn't notice it so much against Dortmund, there was a bit, is the size differentiation in our team versus the Atalanta team. And you can kind of start to see why Rodgers is focused so much on getting Ida and Engels, because they were a couple of our biggest, most physical players. And it's not so much that technically we don't have the ability to compete with these guys, but you saw as we started to enter into the second half, it's big physical battles with players that appeared physically stronger and more athletic than us. And I think that's where we've maybe previously made the compromise domestically. We've had better players, but they haven't had the physicality. And when you're going to a top team like Atalanta, you're seeing they're all get that ability. Some men are bigger than others. Yeah, so I've heard, Monty. But you know, you really started to see like that kind of physical impact, and players get tired towards the end. That's why someone like Kuhn needs a lot of like respect, because he was doing a lot of work against 2 guys in that side that were just like physically bigger than him. So I noticed a lot of the kind of physical element. I can see where some of the signings have come from. To go back to what Paul was talking about, I think we weren't that much different in possession. When we did have the possession, especially in the first half, we tried to get into those positions and make those runs. The difference was out of possession, a lot more compact, a lot closer to each other. But we went, Rodgers will say that we didn't change, and there's an element of we didn't change. We didn't just start lumping the ball up long. We didn't play long balls, just try and get it away and stuff like that. We did try and spot the opportunities to play our game. So, yeah, it was a crazy first half. We did ride our luck, but I think we earned our luck from the organisation and limiting them to those chances. And you could see, especially in the second half, when you started to hit and hope, that's because we were limiting those chances and forcing them into areas that Kasper Schmeichel could pull off some decent saves.
On that point, okay, go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, and your question was, when did you feel like we might have had a chance? When they took off both their main strikers for me. Like, they took off both strikers, they put off Vertonghen and Lookman pretty closely together, and you thought, right, like they're on fire, and both get the hook. Now they still had a strong bench, but you sort of think we've got half a chance here. Like we've seen off the best they've got. Let's just keep it together, and we might get out of this with a point. And we nearly sneaked one at the other end.
Yeah, and Paul, I think not to be like giving myself a pat in the back from the previous one, but I did say Atalanta and Italian teams are a little bit slower, a little bit kind of less aggressive. And I think that definitely helped us in terms of, I know they've scored a lot of goals and beaten teams in the thing, but we did have time to get back into position and get back organised. So I think a little bit that suited us. It would be really interesting to have another rerun against Dortmund and see how after that, how that would translate to the Dortmund game under different circumstances. We won't get it, but it would be, it's interesting to see if the learnings from the Dortmund were there, or if it was just that we did stick to the principles and Atalanta were a bit slower or a little bit less aggressive. I don't know.
Well, I did notice a couple of times players really running fast to get back into position. You see them along the bottom of the screen, Engels and Johnson. I remember seeing both of them not sort of ambling back at the same pace as the play, but properly busting a gut to get back and help the team hold its shape. So that was very noticeable in this game. When you compare it to the Dortmund match, we're talking about how, Atlanta had so many chances and they just kept, heading them wide and putting them over the bar and just thinking these guys don't have their shooting boots on. And I remember, like, Rodgers, after the last game against Dortmund, was kind of ridiculed in some quarters for saying pretty much everything they hit went in. But, there are some stats now, comparative stats between those two games, which really do back up what he was saying. In comparison to the chastening 7-1 defeat in Dortmund, Celtic had less of the ball, fewer shots, and half as many touches. The numbers in both games also show the quirks of stats, given Atalanta failed to score with an XG of 2.33, while Dortmund smashed in 7 with an XG of 2.64. That's pretty interesting, isn't it?
Hey, Gav, when we talk about stats, do we have to put on an American accent? Is my American
It's not
accent
compulsory, but for entertainment purposes,
we're going to talk about stats. Let's talk about stats. Let's not talk about what we saw. Let's not. I'm joking.
I'll put you out of your misery. Yeah, that's where you get to joking.
There is a place for stats, and I think in this instance, I think it does give a good comparison. I mean, look, Adeyemi was just banging them in from all places in Dortmund, and that's what I mean about us deserving a bit of our luck. We just didn't. Yeah. We probably had no luck in Dortmund, and we had a decent amount of luck in Atalanta. So yeah.
Monty's a big fan of the stats here, as you can see. Okay, well, thanks for that intellectual contribution. Yes. Okay, so How were you feeling at halftime then, Paul? Were you pretty comfortable, or what were you thinking the second half was going to hold, or what do you think the managers were saying to their respective teams at halftime?
I think Gasperini would have been a little bit frustrated with the quality of their finishing. To your point, they didn't have the shooting boots. More like they didn't have the shooting heads on. Like most of the chances were headers. There's one off the bar. There's another one tipped over the bar. There's an absolutely. It was all the same guy, the big number 8, Pasalic, I think his name is. And they had a brilliant chance just inside the first few minutes of the second half. He waltzes into the box and he's completely unmarked about the penalty spot. Great delivery, and he somehow, it comes off the corner of his head and goes quite far wide. Halftime, I was relieved. I think, as we all were. Schmeichel had a big save, I think, just before halftime, and you go, well, that takes us in. And I think it's just a chance for the boys to get a breather. They put a power of work in. There's a big shift without the ball. Rodgers would have been pretty much saying more of the same. Probably if we can look after the ball in possession a little bit better, because the press, the more the half went on, the press did come on, and wasn't like glaringly bad stuff, but just we'd make 1 or 2 or 3 passes and then it would break down, and sometimes it was
take a beat. It was kind of towards the end. It was just like, right, you've proven in the first for the first half of the first half that you can play your way out of trouble or find a player, and it just seemed like towards the end of towards the end of the first half, we'd lost that taking a beat. Paul, you've said it a couple of times now about Atlanta not having their shooting boots on. How much of that is down to our tactics? So, there's an element of that, but they were limited to specific types of chances.
Yeah, but I think tactically they targeted us on crosses into the box. I've not seen a lot of them, but from what I've heard and read, they don't usually play with as many crosses into the box. And it shows Gasperini is a brilliant coach, and it shows he's done his research, because we are that was a performance out of type for us. We usually are poor on crosses. We saw it. Okay, it was chopped off because it flicked off Duke's hand, but we gave away what could have been a cheap goal from a corner on the weekend. We're susceptible to a ball over the top, and Scales in the past has been caught underneath stuff. And clearly it was a tactic. We blocked up the middle, so they kind of had to go wide. But I think it was an active tactic pre-game to try and get the ball in the box. And so, we did limit them to chances. It was really tight in the box, and the boys stood their ground and didn't really dive in too much and give them the opportunity to look for penalties and all that sort of stuff, which was good. But there's also, when we say we rider a lot, we did deserve it, but they had some absolute gilt edge chances. That header second half, just early in the second half, he's got to bury that, to be honest. But equally, then there was other balls flashed across the box, and Scales is getting a leg in first, or Trusty's getting there first. The centre back, the whole team's defensive performance was brilliant, but the centre backs were absolutely excellent in terms of, just their ability to put the body or head in front of everything.
Yeah, we'll come on to individual performances in a little sec, but first, just for Monty's sake, let's run through some more statistical representations. This is the stuff that came up on the TV, isn't it? Just after the game. Anything you want to pick out there, Ian?
No, not really. I mean, like the total attempts, 23. Some of them, I mean, were the attempts in target are the ones you need to look at, and they had 7 and we had 2. I think our 2 were decent. From what I remember, the Ida one, I think, like a little bit, or was it Engels? One of them, a little bit more luck, and we have a different result. And there was a couple of near chances for us as well. And when Kyogo came on, obviously, there was that one that was kind of like, do you remember the cup final against Hibs, where it came up over his shoulder and he kind of lifted up. He had a bit more distance between him and the keeper to kind of lob the keeper. There was a situation like that and he just got it slightly wrong, and he's got the ability to do that. So I was thinking, that for Kyogo, that's like a decent chance. So we did have like a couple of opportunities to nick what would probably be an undeserved victory. But yeah, the stats overall, it's a fair reflection, isn't it? Like in terms of the possession and the passing and the overall chances.
Passing, you say? Paul, talk to us about passing.
Well, yeah. Obviously, if you look at it, our passing is all in the kind of defensive half. Trusty was at 23 passes and 100% at halftime. I was really impressed with both him and Scales. Actually, the stats tell you they very rarely gave the ball away, whereas they were both guilty of being slack in Dortmund. So yeah, like their stats incredible. Like they obviously had most of the ball, so obviously they're passing. There's a lot more passing, but I think our guys and McGregor had a good game as well. But yeah, generally I think we looked after the ball in the defensive third much better than we have done in some of these other games that we've been scoring.
I don't know if you saw Schmeichel's post match, but he was talking about how, because if we're giving Gasparini's flowers, let's give Brendan Rodgers his flowers. He was talking about how Rodgers had been speaking to them and setting them up that cause Atlanta go man for man, essentially. That's like part of their system to apply the pressure. We really needed Schmeichel to be like a spare man. So when he was getting closed down, then there would always be a spare man. So that was very conscious in it. So I think that's why you see Schmeichel so high with the number of passes compared to the defense, because it was a clear tactic to use him as a spare man to help take off some of the heat or, find that extra pass. So I thought that was interesting, that there was a deliberate tactic and he was called upon more than he usually is to be like a passing catalyst.
Such a good passer of the ball, though, isn't he? I mean, he's teaching them all a lesson.
The mad one in the first 10 minutes where he took it on the half volley and just pinged it straight onto Ida's chest for the layoff. I was like, that's class. That's class.
Let's annoy Monty a wee bit more here. This is quite interesting. As you can see, all the action is in our half, or our third, middle third. 46 crosses they had. 46 crosses. It's got to be some kind of record. Is it not, Paul?
Who knows? It seems a lot. But the routine, the majority were dealt with very well. The vast. Oh yeah, they had chances, but out of 46, where they have 3 or 4 really good headers, the rest were,
and
clearly dealt with or pressurized.
To your point, if we knew beforehand they were going to have 46 crosses into the box, how many do you think they're going to score from? You'd have been like,
you'd be concerned, right?
Absolutely. We all were concerned. We were very concerned going into it. Who covered the most ground? Can anyone tell me? Ian, do you know?
I think I know, but I don't know if I've seen it, but I would imagine it's probably going to be Calmac.
Drum roll, please. Ta-da!
Yeah, he was everywhere. Indeed. I think that Michael Jordan meme where he's like, I took that personally. I think a lot of people were calling him a bit of a shite bag after Dortmund. So I think he obviously took that personally because he was everywhere and he was really taking care of the ball as much as he could. I think there was only one time that I was just like, oh, why have you done that? But majority of the time he was there and he was getting people into position, talking to them and stuff. So a really, it's the cliche, a captain's performance. I know you love a cliche, Gav. It was a captain's performance from him last night.
All right. Well, let's talk about some individual performances and start with Brendan. Now, you sent me something in today from Twitter, which I think you wanted to use to stimulate a bit of debate. Do you want to read that out? This is from Just an Ordinary Boy.
Did he actually change his tactics last night? So Ordinary Boys thinks not really. It's a case of the players being more switched on, having more belief in themselves and playing to the top of their game. I mean, yes, there might be an element of that, but I think, as we've discussed, there was clear tactical tweaks. They were out of possession. They were a lot closer. That's a clear tactical change. Having Ida up front as a target man is a clear tactical change. And you even saw Ida dropping right back in at points to help out. And there was less inverting, I thought personally, from Valle and from AJ. There was some of it, but there wasn't as much. So I think a lot more structured. So still our shape. And I think in possession, especially in the first half, And maybe when Kyogo came on, we did try and do some of our usual stuff. It's just the quality of the opposition, right? We don't get to practice that a lot. So I think Rodgers deserves credit. I don't think he's ever going to be the type of guy to come out and say, look, I've completely reinvented something because of like the criticism. I think it's probably little tweaks within his philosophy. So I think in his head, he'll think he hasn't changed a lot, but to the eyes, it looked like he changed a fair amount, especially out of possession.
My feeling on that, Paul, before we come to you, is that, I think Rodgers' comments since the Dortmund game and before this one, everyone jumped on one side of his comments and kind of ignored some of the other things he was saying. A lot of people are saying, oh, Rodgers says he's never going to change. He's going to be gung-ho. He doesn't care. He doesn't have a plan B. But, he was saying, I don't want to just be a defensive coach. I'm an attack-minded coach. But he also talked about being more compact and squeezing the space and players being sort of closer to each other and all this kind of stuff. So I think you're right. I think he will say he didn't change that much. It was just tweaks, as opposed to the weight of public opinion bearing down on him and him having to change his whole philosophy. Right, Paul?
Yeah, I think so. The other thing is, what we don't know is quite how aggressively he set us out versus Dortmund, and how much is just sort of muscle memory of the players playing how they're used to play. Like we don't really play. Like that's probably the first time I've seen Brendan Rodgers set the team up like that and play really compact, and much more of a counter-attacking setup, and obviously playing with a slightly, more of a target man, and that's a clear tactical shift. Engels played a lot deeper as well. He sprung forward when we did get the ball up to Ida. He was one of the first there to be collecting the knockoffs and moving the ball on, but he was much closer to Kalmak than he was in like every midfielder was just 5 yards probably closer to the defensive unit than previously. Some even more than that. Like you say, Hatate was probably first press, and then Ida maybe second. But wasn't often they went more than two to the press in any one direction. Whereas in early in Dortmund, there was 4, 5, 6 getting be up and around the ball, and then it's just a quick pass through, and we were completely torn to shreds. So we absolutely changed the system, but he still wanted to get forward quickly. He still wanted to use that pace and attack, and he still wanted to use wide play and get in and cause chances. It's just the quality of the opposition didn't really allow that. But I think there was a slight dig in his press conferences. Maybe that's still not pragmatic enough for some. But it was absolutely, and that was a dig at obviously the detractors and stuff. But we weren't pragmatic against Dortmund. Everything that we employed last night is what we were asking for and hoping for in the Dortmund game, and we didn't get it, and we got a hiding, and we deserved a hiding. You could say 7's half with the XG and all the rest of it, but we allowed that, and we'd never learned our lesson all night. We kept, we got back in at 1-1, and we'd already given away a daft goal, and then we just continued to give away another 4 daft goals in the first half. So we didn't learn our lesson. We could have easily had a plan B that if we got scudded early doors, we go like, this is the shape, this is the pragmatism. Let's try. It's that whole, and we said it in the aftermath of that game. When you go into these tough games, the first 20 minutes, half an hour, just keep it, tight. Don't let anything daft happen. Try and stay in the match. Feel your way in, and that's exactly what we did. And it's what we needed to do in Dortmund a few weeks ago, and we didn't do it. So we all feared we would just see a repeat of that. So it was brilliant for me that we actually tried to change it up a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's good. I think it's good now that we have a template, because I think the things we need to work on now are, we had some joy with some of the quick passing. We definitely had joy, and we didn't capitalise on it with Maeda and Kuhn down the wings. I think Kuhn was a little bit pensive and Maeda was a little bit unlucky. I think that's a confidence thing. I think if we can build in that template and find a way to capitalise on getting people down the wings or the kind of hold-up play from Ida, I think we've got a really solid base there and a way to play against some of these teams. And like you say, it's just a shame that Dortmund's gone, because I just wish had we played like that against Dortmund, I think it might have been completely different, because they wouldn't have smelled blood early doors. We'd have had a platform to build. and they've proven to still be a bit shaky even after us.
Well, now's not the time for hand-wringing. It's a great result, as Who's the Snitch reminds us, so let's enjoy it. I'll tell you another great result is we have 433 people watching us as we speak, 433 watching live, presumably some new people like Martin Weir, who's clearly landed in for the first time and saying hello to some faces he knows from elsewhere. So if you're new, feel free to subscribe, smash that like button.
Not feel free. Just take 2 seconds. Just click click subscribe. So I mean, just join everyone in doing it.
Yeah, you know, we're not owned by a newspaper. We don't charge for content, anything like that. So completely free to you, twice a week. We're not going to send you notifications that do your head in, because it's only twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays. And this is only our second season, so we're pushing hard for that 1,500 subscribers on YouTube. All right, so with that out of the way, let's carry on, I think, with we'll move on to like individual performances. But first of all, here's a tweet from Hollywood A-lister Tony Curran. Can't be underestimated how brave, ballsy, and technically pragmatic that performance was tonight, especially after our last outing. Like many, proud of Brendan Rodgers and his boys tonight. And that was the lineup. So let's talk about it. St. Anthony here. One day this guy will get the recognition he deserves. When is that day going to come? When is Liam Scales going to be hailed as an excellent...
It's been for most of the season, I would say, because his performance level has stepped up this season. I was one of his biggest critics last year, and I stand by. He was making mistakes that he shouldn't have been making at the level, and not the type of mistakes that you want a player that's going to be representing you in the Champions League to be making. But he's absolutely lifted his game, and for me, especially at the beginning of the season, that's because we paid £6 million quid for Trusty, and he was sitting breathing down his neck on the bench, and everybody assumed it was only a matter of time before he would take his place, because CCV was never going to lose a spot other than injury, which is now starting to become even more of a problem. But he has stepped it up since the beginning of the season, and I think that pressure on him has really focused the mind. He's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He would have been close to another man of the match performance in the Champions League last night. I don't know who got the official one. It's probably one of their players because they had more of the ball. But of our players, I would say Trusty was probably the man of the match, but only just ahead of Scales. So yeah, he's massively improved. Don't get me wrong, there's more improvement to come. He got caught just the wrong side on the Aberdeen match on the weekend. But aside from that, it was a pretty big mistake. But aside from that, he had a great performance again. He's always been willing to put his body and head on the line, but now he's starting to look composed with the ball at his feet. He's making better decisions in terms of distribution, and he's more than just a big unit and a stopper that he's the last ditch stuff he's great at, but he's adding a lot more to his game, and I've been really impressed with him, and long may it continue.
I think the thing with Scales now is a little bit, especially on X, it's a little bit of engagement farming, because I think majority of people. I think the criticism now of Scales is going to become what he's not as a defender and what people want from our central defender. So I think a lot of people want a ball-playing central defender, someone who's good, like Ayer, who's going to come out from the back and play it. That's not what Scales does. Scales is now doing what he can do very well to a good level, and the whole system is adapted to that. One of the basketball guys in the US was, I can't remember what he said, but there was a kind of rhyming one, but I can't remember the word, but he said one of the best attributes of any player is availability. And Scales has been available and consistent for so long now that's a big plus point, both in terms of his development, but also in helping the team. So I think he's definitely getting the praise he deserves now. I think what you're starting to see is people perhaps criticising him more for what he can't do and never will do. And I think that's less of a criticism of Scales and more of a criticism in terms of the system and what people want from that position.
I joked recently about if Scales continues to put in these performances, he could be the next player we get a big offer for. And it was sort of a joke. I was saying he could be the next 25 million man, but the rate that he's improving and he's picking up all these awards, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that another team could watch those performances and think that's the kind of guy we need in our side. Who did win man of the match officially? Does anyone know?
I think UEFA gave it to an Atalanta player. And I think
kind of balding guy who was doing a lot. He was on the TV.
Yeah, and I think it was Schmeichel for us because he did. I mean, look, Trusty and Scales did exceptionally well, but I think there's not many goalkeepers that are making that sheer volume of saves and playing the way of Kasper Schmeichel. So I don't begrudge him getting it, but it's definitely one of those three, isn't it? It's definitely Scales, Trusty, or Schmeichel. It's Trusty for me, but I can understand Schmeichel.
I think.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Trusty came of age as a Celtic player last night. He's looked a bit wobbly. He hasn't looked. At times he's looked composed. At times he's looked positionally a bit awkward. But he had a near faultless performance, other than maybe that foul right at the death. It should give we were told by, I think, Sheffield United fans on other podcasts that he was a confidence player. Well, his confidence should be absolutely skyrocketing now, and I can't wait to see where that goes. And he's still been played out of position, so he's another one that last night had been brilliant for. And again, like Scales.
And it was more than just the headers that Trusty was doing. I mean, it was the fact he was also filling in some of the gaps. He was taking the opportunity to go out and close down players. He was making a lot of good decisions. He was carrying the ball a bit. He was making decent passes. So I think it's more than just that pure defensive performance. And I think that's you're right, Paul, in terms of him coming of age. If we had that Trusty all the time, the same way they have that Scales all the time, we're absolutely laughing. And that kind of central defence kind of partnership in those type of games. But the problem is those type of games, the Atlanta type of games, is such a small number of our games. The Aberdeen ones, the Motherwell ones that we'll come on to, etc., where we're expecting more than just a defensive performance. It's stepping out, playing the pass, pushing up, etc. That's more of it. So whilst, yes, it's definitely him coming of age in those type of games and being able to be relied upon in big games, he still has, I guess, some work to do when it comes to domestically and the demands of that side of our game, or that bit of our game, which is more common.
I saw some people saying not long ago, controversial opinion, but Joe Hart's a better goalkeeper than Kasper Schmeichel. Would any of the saves that Schmeichel made last night have evaded Hart's dive or positioning sense or anything?
I don't necessarily think so. I think shot stopping wise, there's not a lot of difference between them. I think the where Kasper Schmeichel is a better operator is 100% better with the ball at his feet and his distribution, but also he dominates his box a little bit more. Like a couple of catches from corners on the weekend. We say that's pretty much doesn't happen anymore. He had a pretty sort of crazy kind of double punch dive to clear his box yesterday. He's just more dominant in and around the box, especially when it's in the air. But yeah, the distribution is first class, and you're right that was that out ball from him straight to Ida with players getting around him. They didn't get to grips with that straight away. I don't, because they probably weren't expecting that. They were probably expecting Kyogo, and yeah. I think Schmeichel he definitely edges it for me. As good as Hart was, and we all love Joe Hart. And by all accounts, I would say I didn't see the coverage that he was on, but yeah, I've heard multiple times, and obviously Ian's confirmed it that him on co-coms and punditry was great again last night.
Paul John Dykes here. Scales, Trusty, and Schmeichel were written off by many after their dismantling by Dortmund. They answered those critics tonight with a brave and mature defensive performance against a top-quality side. What a valuable point this could be. Well, that's certainly true. Before we move on to talking about the valuable point and what's going to happen in the rest of the game, we better not get into trouble with people in the comments and run through lots of players and give them praise. So Kuhn's defensive performance is worthy of note, Ian, says somebody in the chat.
Yeah, 100%. I thought, like I said, physically he was up against a couple of bigger guys. He did a really good shift. He was very, very mindful of his defensive duties. So I think massive credit to him. Like I said, I think what he needs to develop in those sort of games, he's got that lockdown now, is just that little bit of composure when he did have the chance, because he had a couple of good chances to skin the slower players. And I was just like, he can do it. He's got the ability. I think that's maybe a confidence thing. Whilst we're on that side, I think some props have to be given to AJ for taking that yellow card early on and then managing to stay disciplined and like have a solid performance. And you could see the amount of running and tracking he was doing with the cramp at the end. And I think we were all screaming out for some gamesmanship, and he was the one to do it initially. And then was it gamesmanship because he did actually end up having the cramp. But I like when the referee was having the stretcher was coming on, and then he got up immediately as it arrived, and then the referee took that personally and made him go to the centre line to come back on. So just while on that side, AJ as well, taking that early yellow and being disciplined, big props for that too. I guess.
Heart and mouth stuff when he went in on the kind of lunge right before half time. That was heart and mouth. Yeah. Like he kind of had, like, I thought at the time, I thought, what are you doing? Like, just stand your ground. But then on view back, it was kind of, he kind of had to get there. Otherwise, it was like, obviously Schmeichel potentially would have saved it anyway. But yeah, it was proper sort of heart and mouth stuff. If that, penalty and a red card was what was coming if he doesn't time that how he does. So, and then your tatty's over the side. That's game over at that point if that happens. We're not coming back from that.
I know on another day with luck against us in the Champions League, that would have been AJ off for a red card, penalty, all the usual fucking calamity. Paul, I want you to quickly name check some players and say Alex Valle, Bernardo, and Palma.
I thought all were excellent. I thought Valle had a bit of a tough shift again because they were kind of overloading down that side because we were so compact in the middle. They were the wings were the only place they were going to go, and we know by the 46 or how many crosses came in that was a tactic. But I thought Valle was pretty composed. He's still physically, he needs to work on his physicality. And he probably hasn't need to worry about that in the Barcelona academy, but he does if he's going to be, he's going to make it at this top level. But he's so composed on the ball. You can see how technically gifted he is, and he plays head-up football, which you want. So, and he was willing to mix it a bit. He was a slighter guy than the guys he was up against, but he was willing to put a tackle in and leave it on players. I thought, and then he ventured forward and had that great strike that took a wee deflection, and with even more luck, that could have somehow nestled in the back of the net. So, yeah, another great performance. He's just sort of steadily, kind of quietly in the background, getting better and better. Again, like obviously Saturday he had the mistake and he slipped and he let them in, and obviously I think Scales saved the day with that block and the slide. But he is definitely one that you can see improvement, and it's really early on in his full career, like his first team career. So yeah, he did great. Bernardo, you could tell the amount of instructions he was getting before he came on that he was there to kind of try and lock the door and really sort of shore up the midfield, fresh legs, but also kind of just to shore up the midfield and get in there behind Karl Mack. And he did a solid job. He didn't really, nothing flash, but just won the ball back and kept it moving. And then you mentioned Palma. I thought Palma, in from the cold, never expected. You didn't expect him to get anywhere near it. He's not even getting off the bench in Scottish games, but then he's asked to do a job in the Champions League, and I thought he worked his arse off. He forced defenders into giving away foul throw-ins deep in their possession, deep in their territory, allowing us to get up and sort of give the defence a bit of a relief. So I thought he did really well. And you're right, McCowan as well. To get him getting on in the Champions League and that kind of level, he didn't look out of place.
Right. Well, we're almost up to 50 minutes. We're going to have to squeeze a lot into the last however long is left of this show. So let's move it on from individual performances and talk about what it all means. What else happened in the Champions League last night? Here's some other results. what jumps out at you there? Atletico Madrid losing at home to Lille 3-1. That was a big result.
Well, we thought Lille had a horror draw. We thought they had one of the worst draws, and they're actually well in the playoff places. They've had some good results despite that draw. So, yeah, Bayern Munich getting absolutely scudded by Barcelona shows that Barca are well and truly back. I think they were seeded the weakest team in pot 1, but you sort of knew that wasn't going to be the case.
I watched
beating Leipzig in Leipzig.
Yeah, so I'm sure I take it we're going to come on to Leipzig in a minute, but yeah, that's a big result by Liverpool.
Well, we'll come on to the table. This is what it looks like. Aston Villa sitting pretty. Villa, Liverpool, Man City, the top 3. Wow. Monaco and Brest.
You'd say punching above their weight, those two.
Well, Brest are usually above the waist, so
above the weight, above their weight, Gavin.
I see. Then the middle bunch, we're sitting pretty there in 20th.
Someone's at the doorbell.
What was that? Is that someone's doorbell ringing?
Must be Ian's because it's not mine.
Ian's disappeared, so we'll keep the graphic up for a while. These are the people who are in the dead zone, Paul. Interestingly, we've got Bruges, Leipzig, Young Boys. Three of the teams we're going to be playing. So it's getting a bit exciting, isn't it?
Well, so yeah, Bruges are a point behind us. So as expected, they're pretty close challengers. That is a game that I think we should be winning, but it won't be a stroll in the park. Young Boys, I think we expect with Bratislava to be one of the weakest teams in the tournament, so that's not a huge surprise. And that's another game that at home we should definitely be winning, as far as I'm concerned, if we were expected to progress. And Leipzig, on the face of it, look Leipzig
lost.
Well, yeah. So I did some digging. Do you want me to touch on Leipzig now, or is this an opportune moment to discuss Leipzig?
Yes, do, because can we start to look at that game as more than just we might get a point?
Well, that's I had a Celtic mate this afternoon say we've got to win our next home game. I was like, well, I don't think we do. And when the draw was made, I said we need to win the first game and we probably lose the next 3. And if we do, there's no real damage other than potentially confidence momentum, because there's enough winnable matches after that would see us get between 10 and 13 points, or 10 and 12 points. Leipzig have played Atletico Madrid away, got beat 2-1. Juve at home, got beat 3-2. And Liverpool at home got beat 1-0. So they've got 0 points. But they've played, arguably, I would say, three of the best teams in the tournament. They've got, we didn't really pick this up early on, but they've got a pretty hard draw. So they've probably played maybe their 3 hardest games, but there's still another couple of crackers to come. The next fixtures are in the Champions League are us at our place, Inter in Milan, Villa in Germany, Sporting in Germany, and then Sturm Graz away. So Inter and Villa, another 2 really tough ties. Obviously, Villa currently top of the table. So if we assume that that's a knife edge for Leipzig, really there's 3 games for them to target to win, that they've got to win. If they win those 3 games, they've got 9 points, they're in the mix. We say 10 will almost certainly get you there, so 9 might. So they're looking to win those 3 games and try and get a point or 2 off Inter and Villa. And so they're a dangerous beast when they come to Celtic Park, because it's now a must-win game for them. Mm-hmm. They're second in Bundesliga. The only goal difference keeping them below Bayern Munich, 17 points each. They're in second. Dortmund are in 7th. So anyone that thinks we should be getting a draw and potentially winning, I think, tell them they're dreaming. I honestly think we should set up against Leipzig like we did last night. That's how we should set up that game. Ian, you're having a laugh. Do you think they're there for their
dream? Let me dream. listen, they've got to come to Celtic Park, right, under a tremendous amount of pressure, is what you've said there, because they've got to win. They've got to come to us and win, and they've got to try and impose their game and all those little doubts in their head. That's why yesterday was so big for us. We came back. This is the thing, maybe it's not talked about enough. We've come back from an absolute hammering from Dortmund, and then we've gone away to a top-class opposition and got a result. That is huge for the mentality of our team. It's the opposite for Leipzig. So, I think we've got every chance of a draw, every chance of a win. Look, let's take the lessons in there, and it's going to be a different game again. But we've played them times before. I don't think there's anything to fear. I'm not disputing that they're not, second to Bayern Munich and all the rest of it, and narrowly lost all these teams. But we're a decent team. If we can find a way to play and play our game, like, we can definitely get another result. So put it this way, I'm not here saying, we're going to get a result against them, etc., etc. But I feel a lot more confident that we've got the weapons and the system to get a result. What that result is, let's see. I'm not apprehensive about it like I was about going to Atalanta now.
Okay. I was going to say, before the Champions League started, when we looked at the draw and where we picking up points from, it was like we might sneak a point against Zagreb. We might sneak a point against Leipzig. We didn't expect to have snuck a point already by this stage, as the thumbnail of our show tonight. Played 3.4. I mean, that's very exciting. So would you go along with this? This is from Pierce on Twitter. Realistically, we beat Young Boys and Club Brugge at home, and we surely get playoffs. Feeling hopeful again for a good run. And Dortmund was just a fluke. Well, leaving the last bit aside. 2 wins at home against 2 lowly oppositions, quite lowly.
There's so much football to be played, Gavin. This is why, like Villa at the moment, we play Villa in February. So there's so much to be played, and it looks so simple on paper. But on paper, we were getting absolutely battered last night. So you just can't call it. Yeah. I think,
it's exciting, though, isn't it? It's good.
Yeah, but we might touch on Motherwell. But I think if we can keep a handle on it domestically, be afforded the opportunity to rest players, because I think there's a big bit of this is game management as well, in terms of keeping players fit. You've seen with with CCV and Taylor going out, a big bit of it is kind of trying to keep the squad fit and engaged. I think domestically we can keep churning over, start to put a bit of distance between ourselves and our challengers, Aberdeen. Then we might afford ourselves a bit more in Europe. I'm not looking too far ahead. Not looking too far ahead, because it will only upset us.
I will. Let us dream. Let us dream.
He's just there to dream and then go back in his shell. I think that's exactly. Well, we were targeting to those 2 wins, and we thought the extra point that we needed was potentially against Zagreb. So I still think we could go to Zagreb and win there even. That's all possible. But yeah, last night's an absolute bonus point. It wasn't expected. It puts us in the box seat. Look, put it this way, I think we'd all be very disappointed if we don't get into the playoffs, at least 24th position, given where we set ourselves up after what should be the 2 hardest games. Villa, yeah, you're right, Ian. I think it's the last couple of days of January, but they should be qualified by then, and they're the Premier League's taxing on them, so they're not that they're going to just put out a B team against us, but if they've secured top 8. There is a chance they could play a week inside that in that game. Obviously, they'll be billed as a Battle of Britain. They'll want to win it. But I could see a situation where Villa could be already in the top 8 with 1 game to go, and that game is effectively a dead rubber for them. With a bit of luck, it is for us as well. But points in that game obviously push us up the table. So, and the further we get up the table, the better draw we'll get in the playoffs. So I think we actually should be hoping for that. And you're right, there's lots of football to go, but I think we're now in a strong position.
Yeah, there's definitely more twists in the tail, like a Bruges defeat at home or something like that.
By the time we play Bruges, you never know who the manager could be. It could be an ex-Rangers manager going back.
All right, well, that brings us back nicely to the domestic game. So let's turn our attention to that. Here's the table. We're playing Motherwell. They're sitting in 5th. This is the SPFL table, followed by the form table, which is the same because it's the last 8 games. We've only played 8, haven't we? So Motherwell's clean sheet record 12%, ours 75. Do we expect our players to be able to come back and slot straight back into domestic after doing so well in Europe? It's going to be lineup changes. Is Luke McCown going to run the show?
I think we can definitely count on a few changes. I don't think, like famous last words, I don't think it'll be wholesale changes. I'd expect Kyogo to come back, and I wouldn't be surprised to see McCowan come in. I think he's probably deserved it more than anything else to be given it. Bernardo as well, possibly need to kind of see. The shape Johnson was in, Ralston maybe. I don't think it's going to be. It's always a difficult game against Motherwell because of the way that they play and get stuck in more than anything else. I think it's going to be interesting. I always feel that the Motherwell games the referee is a big part to play. So let's see that. I think some changes, but I would hope this is as routine a victory after Europe as we could hope for. Let's see. You're always cautious, but I would hope.
That result has been such a boost to the spirit, hasn't it? We were all expecting the worst. We're going to come back 2 defeats in Europe, another humbling. We're not that good. Can we pick ourselves up and, play well against Motherwell, who've, always got the potential, if we're having a terrible day, to do something. But the mood around the place is just going to be so good. Are we going to just keep it going and steamroll them, Paul?
Well, you certainly hope that's the case. I expect to win again. I agree with you. I think there'll be changes. I hope there are a few changes. You can't just have the same guys going to the well again and again. But yeah, straight off the Dogs are spot on. They will be up for it after that performance. And all the players that sort of came off the bench, there's a good chance that if they don't start, then I'd expect them to get significant minutes as opposed to a few minutes towards the end. I can barely believe that the sentence is going to come out of my mouth, but I would love to see Palmer get more meaningful minutes because he did look bang up for it. And I think he was back on social media saying he was willing to fight for his place and all this. I didn't see it. I read it. But that's the attitude you want. And let's not forget, Palmer, when we were very up and down this time last year, he was one of the shining lights. His performances were consistent. He went off the boil after he got injured, and he sort of lost his way and lost his place. But if he can get some of that form back that he had 12 months ago, I don't think he'll be first. He's not first, but he's not going to dislodge Maeda. But at least he'd be a player that you could rely on in these kind of fixtures post these midweek games. And yeah, he could potentially be a threat again. So I'd like to see. I want us to use the squad. We've got to, we've got a bit of a deeper squad. We need to be using the squad because it's only, what is it? Only nearly. It's not even quite November yet. There's a slog coming through November, December, January, which will define our season, both domestically and in Europe. So yeah, you never know in the back of these, and Fir Park has been notoriously a tricky place to go, but we've usually come through, and hopefully it could be a more routine victory. Hopefully we can get a good early goal to start us off and maybe sort of do them early.
Okay, well, we're going to have to close out the show. Just before we do, a little bit on Celtic socials. I'm going to shine a light on me for a change. I don't know if you might have seen this on Twitter. I did a little video featuring Alistair Johnson, and it got 115,000 views. And Ian, you're our resident Twitter king, so as a beginner on the platform, I'm pretty chuffed with that. That's good going, eh?
It was quality content, Gav. Everyone likes when you spot a little niche, and it was done in good humour. I would wonder if any of the players would pick it up, because I imagine he does say it again a lot. And
well, I'm about to play it, so don't give the game away too much.
If someone was looking to wind him up, that's perfect ammunition.
Okay, well, here it is. For those of you who haven't seen it, enjoy.
What kind of challenge are you expecting from their quality?
Again, it's a It's another big match for us, just like the last one. And again, I think that we all watched a lot of them. So again, it's not going to be an easy task at all for us. We'll keep the noise in pretty good, and I'm expecting it to be quite loud. And again, they're going to try and use that like how we use Celtic Park when we're at home to their advantage. So again, we're ready for that. And again, me just saying it is one thing, but actually doing it is a completely different. Yeah, I think again, it's never as good as you think. It's never as bad as you think. And again, when you give a good player time and space, you can get punished. That's football. And again, it was one of those matches. But no, it would be massive. Again, we're looking at this format, and again, it's not going to be easy. But at the same time, if you can go out here, you can get a result. It'll really kickstart this campaign again, get it going right back on the right track where we need it to be. And again, then you're giving yourself 5 games left to play after this one with, hopefully a lot to play for. So that's an exciting aspect for us. And again, it's a great opportunity for us tomorrow night.
What's going on there? Saying again so much. His first answer to the first question started with the word again. That doesn't make any sense in a conversational
nuance of his language. At least he's not saying like a boot or whatever is the South Park one about the Canadians.
About, yeah. Gav, trust you. That's classic content from you. Trust you to find that and then get fixated on it.
Well, it's the second little again video I've made of Alistair Johnson. I did one and then I did it again.
I missed the first one.
Maybe you need like a highlights at the end of the season of his best agains in the interviews.
Yeah, it's quite a good one though. What else did we see? Well, I was going to put this out as a picture and just... Oh no, not that. Oopsie daisies.
You played that again.
This one. I don't know if you saw this. He's doing the that walk in Spain. What is it you call it? Santiago? Camino, yeah. What a fine looking man he is there. Fine figure of a man. Didn't you say?
Full body.
I'm not sure those shots go with that Barnett, but fair play.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone in the comments, for taking part, as you always do, superbly. It's always great fun. Now then, this is interesting because we're back on StreamYard, you see, and people don't need to know all this, but there's an intro and outro, and I don't have the outro loaded. So let's go over to closing thoughts from YouTube while I investigate what happens when I click this button over here. Closing thoughts, Ian.
Closing thoughts. Stressful night last night, and an excellent result to take us into the weekend against Motherwell, where hopefully I will make my prediction for Motherwell. I think it will be 2-0 or 3-0, depending. My only apprehension, as I've said, is the referee. Well, what's your prediction, Paul?
Well, you've taken 2, and I'm going to take one of your 2 and say we'll go and we'll do 3-0, I reckon. Hopefully we'll get a couple of goals first half and then just bring the changes and maybe stick another one in second half. But yeah, brilliant. Well, I had my doubts, as Gav clearly did, because he didn't bother to do it getting up at 1 a.m. or 1:45. But it was well worth it. And been a spring in my step all day, even though I've been a wee bit tired at work. But onwards and upwards.
Fantastic. All right. Well, until next time, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Like and subscribe if this wasn't pure pish. And we'll be back on Monday. I'm just about to play the outro, which will then automatically end the stream. So hopefully you won't see us again once the closing credits.
Is there a time change, Gav?
There's a time change. Oh, there is a time change, of course. Jeez. As from next week, it's the clocks change in the UK, don't they? So we can't go out at the same time as we currently do. We'll be going out at 9:30, so we don't clash with any other of your favorite Celtic YouTube shows. So it'll be 9:30 a.m. for this next semester, this next half a year, until the clocks change again. That's just the nature of the fact that we come from all over the place, and we're all part of a great big Celtic world. See you next time.